They say it takes a village to raise a child, and that can be even more challenging after a separation or a divorce. So, what does it take to make it all worth it? Good evening and welcome to Women Talk, where we discuss all things women and we engage with experts in the field. My name is Zoraya Vadillo.
And I'm Deborah Henry, and it's really good to be here chatting with you guys again. And we're talking today about the art of parenting. So I call it an art because it requires a lot of skill and dedication. And we've seen, I think if you look at social media, friends, family, we see really ugly examples of when you're going through a divorce, separation, and things go really ugly, they go very wrong, and you see kids suffer. But
then there's also another side to that where there is amazing examples of co-parenting and how parents put the child forward at the beginning and they have amazing relationships actually that sometimes are almost better outside of the marriage than even inside the marriage.
You're very right. And I can only imagine how hard it is for two adults going through something so tough.
There's no one formula for parenting, right?
There isn't.
You have to kind of find that balance within putting the child first, putting yourself first, putting the family first, so it's definitely
it's managing a lot of different parts at the same time. But we're really lucky to have two incredible women with us today. Kim Raymond, thank you so much for joining us. You're a fashion influencer, entrepreneur, a mummy. That's one of the most important roles I think any woman can have. We're really happy to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And Yuri Schneider, who is an author of a fantastic children's book called Two Homes, One Family. And you're a big advocate for co-parenting and passionate about creating more awareness about different kinds of blended families.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure being today with all of you.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, no, and I think it's such a super important conversation that we need to have because I have a lot of friends who actually have gone through separations and divorces, and it just gets so sad, especially for the kids. And I think a lot of individuals watching today, parents who have gone through this, or maybe just if you know someone who's going through it, to be able to actually learn about how perhaps you guys have done it, or there's no right and wrong like we said, but how one can navigate it a little bit better.
And there's more and more separations and divorces that we're seeing, so it's something that we're going to have to start getting a little bit more acclimatized to and just learning what kind of different families. But let's start off with what would you say co-parenting is? How would you define that? Let's start with Yuri.
For me, I think co-parenting is more of a mindset and also the unification, just being a unified representation as a family. So a child may have two homes, but they should experience the full family exposure, and whatever that goes in and out of the house, it should all be unified, including messaging as well. And that will set a foundation for kids to feel loved and safe and protected.
For you, Kim, was it a natural progression? And I wonder, maybe for some couples it can be quite easy transitioning. For many it isn't. But was it a natural progression for you?
Actually, it was. I think because me and my ex-husband, we separated when my daughter was very young. She was, I think, about one year old. So it wasn't really difficult because we were already okay. Me and my ex-husband, and there was no remorse, animosity, or anything like that. So we just eased into it. We had a talk, and we spoke about it, and we were like, I think right now what's important is that we put our daughter first, and as long as she's happy, then we're happy, and let's just be friends,
I think you're both such a brilliant example of co-parenting. So what did you actually do when you had to sit down with her and have this conversation? Did you do something like that with her?
Actually, I did not, because she was one at the time, so as she grew up, until now, she never even knew what a family was like, mom, dad, and her staying together, living together. So she's always been used to the fact that we don't live together.
But I think to your point, Yuri, because there is that unification, there is that sense of peace, safe. It's a safe space for her that she's like, mommy, daddy, and it.
And it's also the same for like my son as well. He and his, my husband and his ex-wife, they separated, I think, just before he turned 1. So the circumstances is a little different compared to other children, because in their minds the norm is actually 2 homes.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Now they're experiencing the separation, right? They're old enough to feel emotions,
Yes.
to see the good, to see the bad. How would you approach it then with the child?
I think the base and the core is for us to sit down with kids, because this is just a personal belief, right? Children, they don't get to choose when and how they come to this world.
That's true. Yeah.
They don't get to choose when their parents go separate ways. So the least we can do is respect them as beings. So it's our job as parents to sit your child down, to tell them what to expect.
Even though it's so hard to do that.
Very hard.
I don't think I even know how to yet. I haven't thought about
exactly.
that.
I mean, as they get older, you'll figure it out bit by bit. But it's all about establishing relationships. Gabor Mate said something really beautiful, which is parenting is not a role, it is building relationships. And that really does apply to your children as well. We're going to go to break, but when we come back, we're going to ask these 2 fantastic women a little bit more about what co-parenting is and what their experience is.
Welcome back to Women Talk, and we're talking about how to be a good parent, especially when going through a separation or a divorce. And I read this quote earlier, and it said, a positive parent-child relationship is the biggest mental health prevention. And I found this to be actually really quite so true and actually so relevant now, because mental health is a big issue, but also we're looking at divorce cases on the rise as well. And recognizing that good parenting is actually so critical to protect your child during a separation.
100%.
However, very often it isn't the case, and you see children being weaponized. They're used as tools, as weapons. Sometimes they're forgotten, or sometimes parents end up battling it out in court. So it really can go really bad. But you wrote this amazing book, Yuri.
Yes, Yuri, this fantastic book, 2 Homes, 1 Family, and it is based on your own son, right?
Yes.
The kind of relationship that you've had to kind of bring yourself into his life and navigating that. So what inspired you to write a book on this?
Actually, the primary inspiration would be definitely my son, and my need for him to know who I was in his life. At a very early age, I think like inching from 3.5 to 4, he already showed signs where he was, asking and curious, like, why is it that I look different from him? And why does he have to switch homes? And why does he have more than 2 sets of grandparents, for example? So when he turned 4, he actually came up with all those questions for his father, just like in the book.
Read a list.
Exactly. And he gravitated so much to books, even until today. So with pairing with the sharing that we were giving him, we decided, like me and my husband, we will embark on this journey to go and find content to support our sort of sharing. But we couldn't find a single book.
That's such a shame that there isn't anything out there.
In
So
major
is this like
bookstores.
one of the first of its kind?
In Malaysia, I hope.
Wow.
Amazing.
The stuff that you can find out in major bookstores, especially children's storybooks or toddler books, right? They paint a very negative picture about
the evil
stepmoms.
stepmom.
Yes, the evil
stepfamily.
the fairy tales.
and they're always the one with the apple and with some trying to kill your stepkid and stuff like that. I know it's really gruesome.
Slightly dramatized.
Exactly. And there's nothing to balance out the sentiment. And as I was doing my research of this book, right, it brings me to my secondary inspiration to continue on with this journey. Was I found out that between 2020 to 2021, Malaysia recorded close to 78,000 divorce cases.
Wow.
So that's a huge number. And so happily, it happens, the divorcees, the age groups are between 28 to 35 years old.
Right.
So you're looking at people that are step parents that would be probably like me, and the kids would probably be like our kids.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a guide as well,
Exactly.
not just for the kids, but also for parents to be able to understand a little bit more of how to navigate this.
Yeah.
Kim, I mean, how has it been for you getting into other relationships or bringing other people into your family now that you're separate, divorced?
For me, actually, I took my time. So I've been seeing someone for about 3 years now.
Okay.
But I only recently introduced Skylar.
How was that?
It was good because I introduced her at first to him as, oh, he's just my friend,
Okay.
you know. So and then he has his own kids too. So then we did it together and slowly, you know. So I told them, I told him, I said I don't want to do it too soon because I don't want them as girls, you know, they're all girls. I don't want them to think that, oh, a relationship is so easy, you know, you can just jump into one and then get out of one and then jump into another one, you know. So I was, and also I wanted Skylar to feel safe, yeah, you know, like comfortable and not feel like she's being forced into anything.
How did she respond to this situation?
She was a bit wary at first, you know, shy and all that. But like now she's more open because, you know, she sees him often, you know, not that he stays over or anything, you know, but like he comes to the house and hangs out for a bit and then goes off.
So I think it's also about building trust, right? And,
Yes,
you know,
correct.
with these new people in your life.
Yeah. And very slowly.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I was reading this fact that about trauma. So often we think, is a child too young? If she's only 1 or he's 1 or 2, they don't understand it. We don't need to have the conversation. But then a lot of the science actually shows that trauma can be experienced and felt when you're a couple of months old.
Yes.
And
It's the energy.
and it stays with the body. So it is, I mean, for the parents out there, individuals, like the aggression and the fighting and the ugliness, that really affects children. And even if you think you're hiding it or protecting them from it, they feel that energy. And that brings me to this point on parental alienation. What would you say about that? Because it is, I've seen some friends go through it, and it is the most...
It's terrible when you weaponize your
awful
kids
thing.
and you use them against the other parent.
I think it's unnecessary, you know, because I feel like when it comes to co-parenting, when you're divorced or separated or whatever it may be, I think you need to think about your kids, you know, and a lot of them, they forget about that. They're only thinking about how they're feeling, you know, like, oh, you know what you did to me when we were together and blah, blah, blah. But what really is happening is that you're no longer together, so that's done, you know, it's gone. Why do you still need to think about that and then forget about your child and even sometimes use your child as a weapon, you know?
Did you and your ex have conversations about this, about how do we handle this situation? How do we be civil with one another?
Yeah, I mean, we were already friends anyways, you know, so there was no anger anymore and whatnot. So it was easier for us to, you know, sit down and talk and say like, look, at the end of the day, she is the most important thing now, you know, so whatever it is, even if we do have differences or we don't agree, you know, we do not ever say it in front of her. And we never make her see us upset with each other or,
But it can be hard. I feel like you've got, you had it good, you know, in a
You're
way.
very fortunate that you have an understanding partner. How did you navigate building a relationship with Ian's mother? How was that conversation and how do you handle parenting in that style?
I think it's really just huge kudos to my husband on this area because he went, I think from the starting point, he introduced me in a very open way. You know, I met my son at the time, and after that I met his ex-wife, and at that time they were already in a very civil place. So that sort of sips through to the relationship that I have with her today. Yeah. So
do you have conversations where it comes to like having to take care of Ian? Like, how do we manage this and that? Do you speak in that way?
We have full custody, so he lives with me more often. But when it comes to communications, my husband fronts the comms. So I think that's very important as well, because as much as the ex is a wonderful person, there is some form of awkwardness as well. And we just have to be real about it.
Yeah, and as I say, sometimes you go, I'm still not the mom, I'm still not the parent, right?
Correct,
so sometimes if the mom and dad still are there, there's only so much.
Correct.
It's kind of knowing the boundaries, perhaps.
And they should, in my opinion, be responsible to take the lead in it.
100%.
And step-parents are there to complement the co-parenting relationship.
We're going to take another quick break now, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about how we can build the emotional resilience of our children.
Yes.
Really
build strong children.
Yeah, focusing on them and that they come out stronger, you know, as adults and better adults for themselves and for their future relationships. We'll see you after this.
Welcome back to Women Talk, where we are speaking about co-parenting. Now, Dr. Shafali Tsabari said something really beautiful. She's a clinical psychologist that focuses on parenting, and she said, life is an eternal balance of knowing and not knowing. And I think when it comes to parenting, that is exactly the method. There's no one straight path. There is the female intuition, which I think we're among women, and that is something really important to trust, is your gut instinct on how to parent your child with love, with support, and that's how you end up creating strong, resilient children. But let's hear some expert advice now from Zoraya Mohammed, a counselor psychologist.
When parents divorce or separate, it can be difficult for them to maintain a civil relationship for the sake of their children. There are three important things you can do to lay the foundation for a successful shared parenting partnership. Number one, understand that you and your co-parent are business partner in raising your children. The truth is that you have just entered a new kind of partnership with your children's other parent, and your collective mission is to create an environment where your children are allowed to love both of you and be loved by both of you. Number two, assess and set supportive internal boundaries. It is imperative to look inward at the personal boundaries you have for yourself. Start with taking an internal look at yourself. Number three, objectively evaluate your past couple dynamic. As in any business partnership, it is important to learn and understand how your partner thinks so that you are able to work together more easily. This foundation will help you identify opportunity to improve your co-parenting partnership and keep emotions separate when consider the well-being of your children in co-parenting dynamics. If you feel you need additional support, reach out to professional support like coaches, counselors, mediators, or a family law attorney to discuss this and help you more.
And I really liked what she said about not bringing children into the conflict.
Yeah, and I read somewhere recently that the first 1,500 days of a child's life determines the rest of their lives.
Yes.
So we have a huge responsibility in our hands. Pressure is on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be destroying your partner. As much as he or she maybe you may think deserves to be destroyed, that is not, like, you cannot have that mindset because...
I think it also depends, you have to see on like the relationship between your partner and your child. You know, if they have a good relationship, then there's no point in ruining that, you know.
Because you leave a void in their hearts as well.
Exactly. I mean, two parents is always better than one, right?
Correct.
I mean, there are situations that are much sadder where you lose a parent and the one isn't there. But if you have a mum and a dad, why deprive your child of either? But maybe you can share a little bit, you know, as we come to a close, do's and don'ts. What are some things that you have been very conscious about doing in your current situations that you think our listeners can actually benefit from?
For me, I always make sure that Skylar knows that she's open to say what she feels, and because I want her to feel like she's not forced into anything or she cannot speak what she, you know, feels. So that's the most important thing. I always tell her that, you know, if you feel anything or you want to say anything, you can say it.
Keep the channel open.
Yeah, you know, and I always tell her, like, you're not forced to do anything. If you want to go, you go. If you don't want to go, you don't go, you know. So, I mean, sometimes she lives with her dad, sometimes. So that's, I feel, the most important thing
Yuri, do you have any do's and don'ts?
I think my main do's would be something related to the video as well. It talked about commitment and communication, right? So if parents can set aside their differences and stop weaponizing kids and just be together in this process and just know that we are there for each other, not to replace one another, but to complement each other.
Yeah.
That gives us more avenue, or it frees up a lot of space in your head as well to have good communication, you know, between two homes. And it's all in the end for the kids anyway. So,
well, final question. We just want to ask, what are you most passionate about as parents, and what do you hope to see for your children?
For me, I just want to see her grow up happy and a kind person, you know.
Yeah.
I really don't need much from her, but that's what I really want to see.
Oh, well said.
And Yuri?
I think from a stepmom's perspective, right, I missed out the first few years, the first year of his life actually. So it's such a privilege to be able to pick up after that. So just knowing that I'm his present and I will be there until my last day, that's the most fulfilling role that I can ever play in this life actually. Yeah. And when it comes to aspirations, I would want like step parents to, you know, stand up and have a voice because you matter.
Yeah.
And you're there not to replace anyone, but to complement each other,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, so let's do it together and let's like set a path for our kids, a more safer, more protected place. So they're just happy.
Yeah. What a beautiful way to put it.
I mean, I think we've said all the right words, you know, commitment, communication, put the child at the center. And I, you know, it's almost like I feel like we're begging people out there, you know, don't allow the strife, the conflict, the anger to take main stage.
Yes.
Let the kids be the center and focus, because I think that will actually help a lot of, you know, parents going through a tough time actually get clarity and actually find a peace a little bit faster.
Set good examples for your children, because they are watching you all the time. They are mimicking you all the time. They are looking at you to lead them into the future. So if you can set a good example for them in your relationships, especially with their fathers and mothers, you're going to have hopefully a winning recipe for a successful child. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of Women Talk.
Yeah, and a big thank you to our guests.
Thank you
so much for sharing.
you.
It's always really good to have people on the show that really open up and realizing that it's so valuable to the listeners.
Yes.
And
thank you.
if you have a chance, get a hold of this book, especially if you are navigating your own stepson, stepdaughter situation.
Thank
Thank
you
you all very much.
See you next time.
See you next time.